That's right.
And what is it you want?
A man like you must have a story to tell.
The world's been singing my story for the past 15 years. You could have picked anyone off the street. They'd have been able to tell you my story.
I didn't turn over half the world to hear another fable.
No, I don't imagine you did. Okay, but before I tell you my story, I need you to look me in the eye. What if you don't see the hero the legends claim? The glory, the valor, the self-righteousness. What if it was nothing more than a thinly veiled web to mask a bed of greed, soaked in a river of blood?
After what I've sacrificed to find answers, quite frankly, I came for the blood. And I had hoped you'd be willing to go on record.
I suppose it wouldn't hurt. Chosen Undead, codename Snowflake. And despite what you've heard, I didn't wield the legendary Moonlight Greatsword, or wield a dragon tooth as a club. Those were the weapons of heroes long before my time. Surely in your research you read the legend of Dark Souls.
Of course.
And the prophecy of Dark Souls 3.
Briefly, but what does that have to do with...
I'm getting there. I've always liked a good challenge. So I challenged myself to not use anything from the legend of Dark Souls or the prophecy of Dark Souls 3.
But that's insane. If you did that, you wouldn't be able to drink Estus, and you'd be limited to just a handful of weapons.
I was insane. We were a simple mercenary group, delivering humanitarian supplies to war-torn areas, protecting the locals from bandits. Called ourselves the Demons. At first, it was just a cool name. But here's the thing about names. You wear them long enough and you start to see yourself become them. And we became demons. It didn't take long to blur the lines between who needed help and who could afford our services. There was this one day. I had just dropped off a care package at a local village. It was the third time this week. There had been a lot of fighting in the area. No sooner than I left, I heard war break out again. Steel on steel, screaming, nothing but hate. I rushed back in to lend aid, and I found a group of bandits huddled over the crate I had just delivered. I shouted at them and they scurried off into the shadows. I went over to salvage what was left of the supplies. There was no food, no bandages, no medicine. It was a cache of weapons. I had been arming the bandits that were terrorizing the countryside. When I got back to base camp, I confronted my superior. I told him I was going to take this all the way to the top. He laughed at me. These orders had come from the top. That day opened my eyes, and I saw what we had been doing. We had created the whole damn war, and were being paid handsomely to keep it in check. I wanted out. Every summer, we'd all get together at Camp Majula, take a big group photo, send it out as a Christmas card. Anyways, if I wanted out, I'd have to eliminate everyone in that photo.
Hey, I know you probably have a lot of questions right now, like, what the hell am I watching? Fair.
That's a fair question. So yes, this is in fact a Dark Souls challenge run video. This is the Snowflake Challenge. Here's the basic idea. I'm a special little snowflake, and I can't use anything that isn't itself unique and special. Because if I did, I would no longer be a special little snowflake. Here are the ground rules. 1. Beat all bosses in all 3 Dark Souls games. 2. If something appears in another Dark Souls game, it isn't unique. 3. If something isn't unique, I can't use it. 4. If any rules are in conflict with Rule 1, defer to Rule 1. So for right now, all you really need to know is I'm starting without any weapons and armor.
Dragon Rider. Full name, Anthony Dragon Rider. I wasn't quite sure what angle to take, given my restrictions required me to be unarmed at the time. And then I saw it. Likes to walk dangerously close to high ledges. Bingo. That was my ticket in. A big guy like him wouldn't think much of me. I stood right next to that edge. He couldn't resist. The Last Giant. Nickname, Stumpy. I wasn't sure why they called him that. He was a big, lanky motherfucker. Not too graceful neither. I still had nothing but the left and right hands of justice at my side. Let's just say, justice was served. Word of my transgressions had gotten out, and the higher-ups were none too impressed. So they sent someone after me. The Pursuer. This motherfucker swooped into me on a fucking eagle. We had a bit of a tussle. I was outmatched. Luckily for me, he decided to jump me right next to some military hardware. I had the feeling I'd be seeing him again. Hey, me again. And it's time to talk about weapons. Because there's a lot of them in Dark Souls 2. About 225 and my list is complete. Now there are a few reasons that might disqualify a weapon. 1. Having the same name or a similar name from something that appears in another game. A great edge case example of this is binoculars. They have the same name as the binoculars from Dark Souls 1, and even though they're a weapon in Dark Souls 2, they are fundamentally the same thing. In other words, very, very illegal. 2. Having the same appearance or a similar appearance from something that appears in another game. A perfect example of this is the Monastery Scimitar, which is of course just a rename of the Painting Guardian sword. 3. Not being able to distinguish itself enough from a generic item that appears in another Dark Souls game. The most notable example of this is probably the Hade Spear. By many accounts one of the best weapons in the entire game, as well as being one of my favorites. But it just wasn't unique and different enough from other spears for me to feel comfortable allowing it. So all this finagling takes us from this to this. And after all that explanation, the only thing I really need to tell you right now is I want to get the Blue Knight Halberd. It's going to give us the damage we need to get to the good weapons. Old Dragon Slayer. He was listed as MIA, but I knew better. I had worked alongside him. To be honest, I could have probably left him alone. If those knights had their way, he never would have left that tower. But I didn't want to tempt fate. Flexile Sentry, better known as the Twins. You know in older cartoons how every episode would have a different villain? And how eventually they'd run out of ideas and just start throwing things at the wall? Then you probably remember how often they would throw in an evil duo called the Twins, or the Danger Sisters, or some equally stupid bullshit. And they'd always be master swordsmen, or martial artists, or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, these twins were nothing like those twins. Honestly, forget I mentioned it. By then I figured it was about time to pay some of the local crime bosses a visit. The Skeleton Lords. These corrupt assholes ran half the scams in Drang Lake.
They were big on greed and short on mercy. Sorry, boys. All out of mercy. When I was done clanking their skulls together, I figured it was time to move on to my next mark. The Scorpioness, Najka. I guess she heard me coming, because when I entered her lair, she was in the middle of trying to bury herself in the sand. This was gonna be easier than I thought. Holy fucking shit! Apparently she's a goddamn scorpion now. Remember what I said about names? We really should have been more careful. And I was careful. Najka, not so much. Next on the chopping block, the prowling Magus and his congregation. I know what you're thinking. What kind of shady, underhanded things was the church involved in? Nothing, actually. I was just on a bit of a murder spree. The covetous demon. Remember when I said we became demons? I wasn't kidding. Jeez, you think I would have realized sooner that we were the bad guys? I mean, some of us were literally transforming into demons. His death opened the path into Earthen Peak, home of Mitha, also known as the Baneful Queen. This woman was so toxic, she cut off her own head just so she could hurl insults at you from a longer distance. She should already be dead, but I guess the toxic swamp she lives in was enough to sustain her spiteful spirit. Was. And how could I forget the walking furnace? Smelter demon. Codename Hothead. This monster wouldn't have been such trouble if it wasn't for the knights tasked with keeping him caged. Every time it fended me off, I had to run through that barrage of assholes all over again. It could only push me back so many times before I managed to smother that campfire.
Oh boy, this is my favorite part of the video, because this is the part where I get to point out all the cool and interesting stuff that you haven't even thought about yet. First up, classes. Dark Souls 2 has two unique classes, the Swordsman and the Explorer. Why did I pick Swordsman? That leads right into our second topic, stats. We can only level the most broken stat in the whole series, adaptability. Which is the answer to your question. We picked Swordsman because he has better strength and dexterity, and pretty much every stat that isn't adaptability. We get access to way more equipment if we pick the Swordsman. Our third topic I want to touch on is rings. Most of the rings aren't really that interesting, but worth mentioning is the rings of strength, dexterity, faith, and intelligence. Since we can't level any of these stats ourselves, we have to rely on equipment to boost our stats. And if you've played Dark Souls 3, you're probably aware that these 4 rings got renamed and reskinned, so they should be legal. But I said fuck that. I'm still not going to use them. Which really cuts into the equipment I can use. My maximum strength is 28, which is 9, plus 1 from the Crown of the Sunken King, plus 4 from the Vessel Shield, all multiplied by 2 for two-handing. My maximum dexterity is 23, which is 16, plus 2 for Kale's Helm, and plus 5 for the Workhook. Technically, I can get an additional plus 4 from the Vessel Shield, but both my hands will be full and defeat the purpose of increasing my dex. And I'll get this point out of the way here. Intelligence and faith don't really matter, because I can't use any of the spells.
By this point, I had taken out most of the underlings. I had cleared a path to some of the big players in the game. I'm a bit foggy on some of the details, so I might not be able to paint you as clear a picture. The old Iron King. He held one of the 4 keys to the castle. I might not recall exactly what happened. Let's just say, he's still floating in his hot tub. Next, I went for the Duke. He was the money behind the operation. He might as well have just been another hollow. The real trouble was his pet spider, the Duke's dear Freya. That battle looks something like this.
After that, I decided to visit an old friend, the Lost Sinner. He was locked up in a place lost to time, the Lost Bastille. I never knew what he did, and logically speaking, this guy was incarcerated. There was no reason to punish him for his crimes. He was never gonna come after me. He probably hated them as much as I did. But he carried the third key. There was no stopping. I suppose I could have asked for the key. Something tells me it was the kind of key that had to be taken. There was only one key left to take, and I knew who had it. It was time to plunge into the criminal underworld that slept just beneath Camp Bajula. It felt weird coming back here after all these years. We're gonna jump back to me to explain this bit. Hey, because I think it's kind of fun. I have to actually pay this asshole for his damn ladders because we can't use the Silver Cat ring or level our health. Which I guess is lucky, because if these ladders weren't an option, I'd have to legalize either the Silver Cat ring or leveling vigor. And I never actually came up with a system to decide which to choose. The Rotten. This is the guy we always called the Butcher. He always carried a big meat cleaver. God only knows what he did with it. When I got there, he looked almost remorseful for what he had done. He was picking up the pieces of his shattered soul and trying to put them back together. I didn't show him any mercy. Although I suppose a quick death was the mercy he was looking for. With the last key in hand, the way to the castle would open. A few guards posted at the inner gate didn't slow me down. I expected to find the king inside, but he had abdicated his throne. I ran into the other two Dragon Rider brothers, Benjamin and Carl Dragon Rider. They were in charge of taming dragons. What were they doing here? I shudder to think what could happen if the dragon cages were left unattended. 2-on-1 can be a tricky fight, so I decided to bring a little poisonous edge. It leveled the playing field a bit, although any field with those two fat corpses lying on it is far from level. With the king gone, I wasn't sure where to head next. I walked out into the courtyard where I found myself face to face with Looking Glass Knight. This crazy motherfucker uses a giant mirror as a shield. I wasn't looking for 7 years of bad luck, so I was careful not to break it. This little shit wasn't as lucky. Once I bested him, I noticed something strange. There was a secret elevator behind the castle. It appears the king has fled. Down into the flooded passage I went. As I lit a bonfire to spend the night, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. As if I had been here in a past life. I knew what was to come, and I was not looking forward to it. As if guided by my past memories, I skillfully sidestepped every obstacle in this godforsaken place, and emerged on the other side unharmed. And on the other side I was met by the fabled Demon of Song, who intended me much harm. But the harm would prove to be one-sided that day. As I cut the frog demon apart, my blade glanced off something hard. It wasn't bone because it made an audible ping. Could it be? I reached my hand into the beast's stomach and withdrew the legendary key to the embedded. This would come in handy. I was going after the king now. I know this area. The Undead Crypt. There's only one way in or out of this place. If the king went this way, he was close. I ran into the king's bodyguard, Velstadt. Codename, the Royal Aegis. I don't have a single bad word to say about that man. He was honorable, right to his core. But he would never stand aside. His honor would be his undoing. So I undid him. As I walked into the next room, I saw a decrepit old hollow. He was trudging around with the ruler's sword. It was the ruler of all Drangleic, King Vendrick. I charged forward at him. As I let loose my anger upon him, I noticed something was wrong. He didn't flinch. Some ancient sorcery was shielding him from my blows. Had I lost? I tucked my tail between my legs and ran. I would have to come back for Vendrick. I sought answer from Vendrick's old foe, the Giant Lord. He wasn't much for talking, but in the end he did spill his guts to me, the soul of a giant. I would need more to break Vendrick's spell. Most of the giants were already dead. I would need to steal one from a slayer of giants. Vendrick always hated the giants. He bred dragons for the very purpose of hunting them down. I would find the soul I sought in the dragon Eyrie. I turned slowly in its direction, pausing briefly to ponder what horrors could have befallen in the dragon rider's absence. My fears were warranted. As I traversed through Aldia's keep, I could see many of his lesser beasts had already escaped their cages. I came across the guardian dragon still in its cage. He was angry. Or perhaps she. I never could tell with dragons. She was angry, and as he rained a fiery hailstorm down upon me, I waited. I could do nothing but wait. She got impatient. He lunged at me with a burning hatred. I charged at her with a shining sword. Let me give you some advice. Don't ever bring hatred to a sword fight. A sword beats hatred every time. Hi. One last thing to point out. Upgrade materials. Petrified dragon bones are all I have. As far as the key to the embedded has carried us, I want to use something new. So without any further ado, here's a list of weapons that I'm considering. Place your bets now, because I really need to get this show on the road. None of these dragons carried any giant souls. They had a lot of bones, though. I figured these might be useful for later. At the peak of the summit was the giant slayer I was looking for. Ancient Dragon. You know the old saying, when you play with fire, you get burned? Well, I got burned a few times. Decided to look up a tutorial online. How to slay a dragon. I followed all the steps carefully, and just barely managed to take the beast down. The battle was epic. Like a beautifully choreographed ballet, weaving past each other gracefully as if one. We were in a zen flow state that seemed to drag on for an eternity. Me and the dragon dancing together. We stared into each other's eyes, both knowing this evening couldn't last forever. I would look for you in the next life, I whispered into his ear. As I thrust my blade between his toes, he let out his last majestic roar as the life rushed from his eyes, as if to say, I will wait for you, my love. Sorry. Where was I? Yes. It was the last giant soul. With Vendrick's magic dispelled, he was mortal. As hollow as he was, he had tremendous strength left. I was careful not to be caught by his desperate swipes, and dispatched of him quickly. With Vendrick dead, it was time to search his castle for answers. I found a long cavern beneath the castle, and at the end of it was the true throne of Drangleic. There was just one problem. Throne Watcher and Defender. I was well equipped for this fight, but 2-on-1 is more than you can ask of any normal man. I am no man. Did I mention that I was a woman this whole time? Throne Watcher was the first to fall. Time to take out Throne Shit. Throne Defender was the second to fall. Then I just had to... God damn it! Throne Watcher was the third to fall. You've gotta be shitting me. Throne Defender was the fourth to fall. Oh, don't you fucking dare. As I stood over them, a chill washed over the room. I turned around. It was Nishandra, but we just called her the bitch. She had been patiently waiting to take the throne. I didn't wait for her. As her body turned to dust, a wave of heat rushed back into the room, and then a voice made itself known. Aldia, scholar of the first sin. This muck-looking, fire-breathing pile of sticks was the mastermind behind the whole operation. Aldia had little talent for bloodshed, and with my resume, he wasn't expecting to win. We both knew who would come out on top. With the ringleader dead, there were only loose ends to tie up. First, I would have to put down the beasts that once terrorized the province. Executioner's Chariot, the Belfry Gargoyles, Royal Rat Vanguard, and who could forget Royal Rat Authority. It was time to head to Shulva, the Sanctum City. What? The Sanctum City. I was ambushed by 3 former colleagues while exploring some caverns. Varg, the soldier, Sarah, the explorer, and Dick, the grave robber. On second thought, let's just call him the afflicted grave robber. So, hi. I already wrote this joke by the time I realized the afflicted grave robber is actually a woman. Who knew? So, deal with it. I was far outnumbered by these 3. I could only run around in circles in the hopes to tire them out. An hour later, I endured and they did not. I also found a pretty flower skirt to wear. You may have thought you saw me wearing it earlier. I assure you this is not the case, as I am telling you this story in a linear fashion, without jumping around at all or omitting major parts. I suddenly found myself staring down my old friend, Alonne, the squalid queen. She had fallen far since I last saw her, and she would fall farther still. Not before sending her underlings after me, and Velstad's brother, Wendell, the grimy Aegis. His reputation preceded him, as did the smell. I dealt with them all accordingly. Locked away behind her chamber, I found Sin, the slumbering dragon. I have nothing bad to say about Sin. He is just so much fun to be around. Reminds me of when my dog was still alive and we'd go into the backyard and play fetch together. But even good things must come to an end. Good boy. With Shulva cleared out, I headed for Brume Tower. This was the domain of the old Iron King. Kinda weird how everyone there was tougher than him. My first mark was afraid of heights. I'd find him at the very bottom of the tower. Fume Knight. Real name, Terry. He might seem scary at first, but Terry here is one of those guys who's so big and scary that nobody wants to fight him. But I did. By the way he swung his sword around, he'd never been in a duel in his life. Just focus on your footwork and let old Terry here make the mistakes. After I cured Terry of his acrophobia, I caught a familiar scent. Fire. I'd bet anything it was another candle with legs. Smelt a demon. A blue one this time. It was more agile than the last matchstick. Gave me more trouble, too. But I was determined to turn that smoldering ember into a puff of smoke. And that's just what I did. It was time to deal with Sir Alonne. Perhaps the oldest warrior alive. And he had been waiting for me. Which is only fair, since I couldn't wait to shove my bident into his gullet. After getting lost in the tower halls countless times, I was eager to duel. The old man took advantage of my haste and drew first blood. I could not afford to be so careless. I pulled myself together. This would be a duel for the ages.
Oof. These walls are really pissing me off. Yeah, that was a slow one. Like, that's a thing you can do. And I don't know how to tell the difference. Nope, no stamina. Very interesting, though. Okay, we're just rolling. It's fine. Oof, scary. It's fine. Okay, we ran out of stamina, that's bad. I cannot see back there. That was way too close. Okay, gotta be careful on that one now. Shh, don't care.
Well fought, sir. My photo was looking awfully red, but it still needed a few more people crossed out. I couldn't avoid him much longer. It was time to take on the devil himself, Dark Lurker. To get to him, I'd have to face my biggest fear, the dark. After rendezvousing, is that a word? Rendezvousing? After meeting with an old friend, and dying like 1 billion times. Yeah, I died like 1 billion times throughout this story already, but you don't see me complaining, but you're still alive, and how are you even telling this story right now? After braving the 3 chasms of the abyss, I was ready to face Dark Lurker. During our tango, I narrowly escaped death a few times. Okay, a lot. I narrowly escaped death so many times, I felt a pulsing sensation throughout my body. My veins burned with fire. I felt a hunger I hadn't felt in so long. Perhaps this was hollowing, or perhaps I was becoming my inner demon. Either way, my human effigy stores were running low, and my asshole friend kept charging a human effigy every time I wanted to enter the dark. I decided I should probably stock up on a few more of these, as I would be at it a while. Dark Lurker didn't seem to mind me taking a break from our dance. He was totally cool with it. After securing a sizable stash of effigies, I was once again ready to two-step Dark Lurker. 2 steps. I step you, you step the ground. No, you're right, that joke really doesn't work here. All set for my hours-long hoedown. We started with a waltz, which quickly transformed into a boogie, and we finished with a shuffle. Flawless. With a quick bow, we parted company. Fuck. Do I really have that many effigies left? There was only one person left. The most evil and corrupt man I've ever known. The Burnt Ivory King. The only thing standing in my way? Ava, the king's pet. She was a fucking jungle cat, a goddamn tiger, an invisible motherfucking wizard panther. You heard me right. That leopard could cast spells. I can't even do that. I didn't have to play with that kitten for long. I guess she was all tuckered out. The path to the Ivory King was clear, but I'd need help. The Ivory King had kindled a terrible fire beneath his former home. The old chaos burned beneath Lamb Lois, sustaining itself on the evil, corrupted soul of the once uncharred former king. Waiting patiently for a soul grand enough to melt the icy walls of its prison and engulf the world in flame. A few loyal knights, untouched by flame, pledged their service. We were outnumbered, but their advantage made them arrogant. The burned knights came at us in waves. When it became clear we could not fight them back forever, the brave knights of Lamb Lois gave their lives to hold them off. I would need to defeat the Ivory King alone. He fought with such a fury and tenacity that was unmatched by any before him. I even thought I was gonna die a few times. It took many more close calls to figure out his movements. The Ivory King was powerful. I was afraid to die. But I remembered the way the Lois Knights gave their lives. Fearless. But it was not bravery that dealt the killing blow. I did. The Burnt Ivory King was no more. The old chaos would have to rest. As I looked onward into the distance, I could feel my great quest coming to a close. There was one challenge yet to overcome. A ravenous duo hiding at the edge of the frozen wastes. Blood and Zalin. I just call them Two Cat. I don't know what kind of sick fuck thought it was a good idea to hide these cats at the end of a treacherous valley filled with deadly ice unicorns in constant blizzards. Or what kind of sick fuck decides to run through it all, over and over again. I guess we've all got our demons. When it came to fighting these two, my nerves were on fire. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but 2-on-1 can be a real bitch. It's less of a fight and more of a pray to God that these sons of bitches don't do any annoying shit. Because if they do, I can't do anything about it and I'm just gonna die. I had prepared all sorts of weapons in anticipation of this fight. A crossbow, a sword, a bident. The crossbow was a goddamn waste of time. It turns out keeping your distance isn't really that helpful when you're fighting wizard panthers. But it was nice to have an extra sword around. These cats can really wear down your equipment. And trust me when I say this, you don't want to get caught fighting two wizard panthers with a broken sword. If the fight goes just right, it might look something like this.
Or 22, that's a nice hit. I'll take that any day. Even today. Of which is a day. Okay, I don't want to punish that. Just kidding. Get fucked. Alright, if we can get another... icicles, that would be ideal. Jump back? No? Alright, fuck it, I don't care. Ooh, we can get icicles now? I didn't think we'd get to this low of health. Okay, we're just gonna hit him, I don't care. Other tiger sounded like he was coming anyways. Are they tigers or are they... No, they're tigers. I don't care, it was worth it. Uh-oh, I'm stuck. Cool. I feel okay right now. Nice. Now just be safe. Cool. I was prepared for him to do that attack, and it turned out fine. No punish. I don't feel good about it. Okay, we're gonna punish that. He's gonna follow up. Nice. Nice. What are you gonna do? You wanna... Yes, please. I will take the free hits. Chase after him, always chase. Oh, he's buffing. And get away. You can heal as much as you want, bud. I don't care. Do something, please. Oh, my sword is almost broken. This really sucks. Oh my god, I didn't see that one coming. No punish, no punish. He's exploding. Easy tell. No punish, no punish. His buff is up. Don't know what he's gonna do. That's fine. No jump back, I can't punish. Always chase, always chase. No punish. Get out. Get out. If you do it right, when you finally win, you don't feel super amazing because you believed that you deserved it and you had all the confidence in the world. And that's what just happened. Oh my god.
Boy, I sure am gonna miss that game.
What do you mean, game?
What do I mean, game? We've been sitting here for the past hour talking about video games. How the fuck did you not realize? Wait. Have I been talking to myself again? God damn it.